How to Overcome Depression, Practical Steps for Finding Light in the Dark, as our source material for this one.
Yeah, and I'm actually really excited to get into this one. It seems like it goes beyond just like the quick tips and tricks and actually tries to get to the root of like what even IS depression.
Yeah, because I think that's where a lot of the advice that people give kind of falls short.
Totally.
You know, it's like all that stuff about just think positive and all.
Yeah.
It's like you can't just slap a Band-Aid on a broken bone, you know?
Totally. Like telling someone to just snap out of it is like so dismissive.
Right.
When you don't understand what they're actually going through.
Exactly.
So I guess to start off, what does this book say about like what depression actually is?
Well, it really emphasizes that depression is like way more than just feeling sad. You know, it's this deep, intense feeling that's persistent, and it can affect like every part of your life, your work, your relationships, even just how you see yourself.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense because it explains why like even just getting out of bed can feel so impossible sometimes.
Yes.
It's not just a bad mood. It's like this thing that's affecting your energy and your motivation and everything.
It really is. And the source actually compares it to like having a broken leg. You wouldn't tell someone to just walk it off if their leg was broken.
Right.
So you can't really expect someone to just snap out of it when they're dealing with depression. It affects your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors.
Yeah.
It's complex.
So, okay, we've got that baseline understanding now, but like, where do we even go from there? What does this book suggest we actually do?
Well, one thing that really surprised me was the emphasis on routine.
Really?
Yeah. It sounds kind of basic, but when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Because when you're depressed, everything just feels so chaotic and overwhelming.
Right, like you've completely lost your bearings.
Yes, exactly. And so having a routine, even just a very basic one, can be like an anchor in that storm. The book explains that routine actually helps to regulate our brain chemistry, and it reduces decision fatigue. So it gives your brain a break.
Yeah.
When everything else feels like it's out of control.
Oh, okay. So we're not talking about like having to become a super organized scheduling fanatic.
No, not at all. It could be something as simple as like setting a consistent wake-up time.
Okay.
Or always having a cup of tea before you start work. Just little things that bring a little bit of structure to your day.
I like that because it feels achievable. You know?
Exactly.
It doesn't feel overwhelming. And I'm wondering, like, could a small change to my routine actually start to shift how I feel?
That's the hope.
Yeah.
You know, it's about like creating some positive momentum. What's one tiny routine tweak that you could make? Even if it's just 5 minutes different as a start.
Challenge accepted. I like it. So we've got routine as a foundation. Now, building on that, the source talks about something that honestly might feel kind of challenging at first. Gentle movement.
I know. When you're feeling depressed, exercise can seem like the absolute last thing you want to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, if someone told me to hit the gym right now, I think I would just roll over and go back to sleep.
Right.
But I'm sensing that's not exactly what the book is suggesting.
No, not at all. It's not about those intense workouts or anything. It's more about just like tapping into the mood-boosting power of endorphins.
Okay.
Even if it's just a short walk or some light stretching.
Oh, so like maybe that walk could become part of the new routine.
Exactly.
So you get like the routine A and D, the endorphins.
Here you go.
Double win.
I like it. I like it. So speaking of ways to kind of like calm the mind and get yourself into a better headspace, the source also mentions mindfulness and meditation. And I can see how those things could be helpful in general. But I'm curious, how does the source specifically link mindfulness to overcoming the challenges of depression? Well, remember how we talked about how depression can involve those negative thought spirals? Mindfulness helps you to become aware of those thoughts as they're happening without judgment.
So it's not about like silencing the thoughts completely.
Right.
Which can feel impossible.
Exactly. It's more about just like creating a little bit of space between you and the thought so that it doesn't automatically drag you down. And the great thing is there are so many free guided meditation apps out there now.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really accessible, even on those days when you have really low energy.
Okay, I'm liking this toolkit we're building here. Small steps, manageable changes, no pressure to overhaul everything overnight. What else does this book highlight?
Well, it talks about something that I think we all need, especially when we're going through tough times, a support system.
A support system.
Okay.
I'm interested to hear more about that.
Yeah, because even if you don't feel like talking, just knowing that you have people who care about you can be so comforting. The source describes it as like having a safety net, just a reminder that you're not alone in this.
That makes a lot of sense. that feeling of knowing that there are people you can reach out to if you need to.
Exactly.
I'm wondering, though, what does the source say about actually building that support system? Because for some people, reaching out can feel really difficult.
Yeah, that's a good point. The book actually gives a really practical tip. It suggests that you identify who your support people are.
Okay.
And then actually draft a simple text message that you could send on a bad day.
Oh, wow. I like that.
Like just something like, hey, just need some virtual hugs today or something like that.
Yeah, that's so smart. Because it takes the pressure off of trying to articulate exactly how you're feeling.
Exactly.
When you're already struggling.
It removes that barrier.
Yeah.
And it makes reaching out so much easier.
So it's like giving yourself permission to ask for help, even in small ways.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about routine, gentle movement, mindfulness, the importance of a support system. Is there anything else in the source that really stood out to you?
You know, there's one more element that I think is so crucial when we're talking about dealing with depression, and that's self-compassion.
Well, I was hoping we'd get to this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like depression can really beat down your self-worth.
It does.
It's so easy to get caught in that cycle of self-blame and shame.
Absolutely. And the book actually quotes this Buddhist teacher who says, self-compassion is not about letting ourselves off the hook, but about holding ourselves with tenderness when we stumble.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I thought so too.
It's like instead of berating ourselves for struggling, we try to offer ourselves the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend.
Exactly.
In a similar situation.
It's about recognizing that you're going through something really difficult.
Yeah.
And giving yourself permission to be imperfect, to have bad days.
And maybe instead of focusing on everything we're doing wrong, we try to acknowledge what we are managing to do, even if it seems small.
Yes.
Which I think ties into what the source says about celebrating small wins.
Absolutely. The source highlights this as being so important because it helps to counteract that feeling of helplessness that can come with depression.
Right.
Every small step forward, no matter how tiny, it's a victory worth celebrating.
And if we connect that back to that small routine change we talked about earlier, even accomplishing that one thing, that's huge.
It is.
It's about proving to ourselves that we are capable of taking action.
Yes.
Even when it feels really hard.
Exactly. And each small win builds on the last.
Yeah.
So you start to create a sense of momentum and empowerment.
I like that.
It's about shifting your focus from what you haven't done to what you have accomplished.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on how to deal with those tough days.
Yeah.
Instead of getting bogged down in all the things I should be doing, maybe it's about acknowledging what I did do.
I think that's a really healthy mindset shift. And the source reminds us that overcoming depression, it's not a linear journey, you know? It's going to have ups and downs, good days and bad days, and that's okay.
So maybe instead of beating ourselves up for not being fixed yet, we focus on celebrating those moments of progress, those glimmers of hope.
Exactly.
This has been really insightful. So far, we've learned that depression is a lot more than just feeling sad. We've talked about the power of routine, gentle movement, mindfulness support systems, and self-compassion. As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, is there any final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
We've talked a lot about celebrating progress and those small wins, but sometimes I think the biggest accomplishment is simply choosing to keep going, to keep fighting for yourself.
I love that because it acknowledges that just holding steady, not letting yourself slip backwards, can take so much strength when you're dealing with depression.
Exactly. It's testament to your resilience, your inner strength. And it's something to be proud of. It really is. It's a testament to your strength. You're still here. You're still fighting.
And that in itself is something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't check off all the boxes on your to-do list.
Yeah.
Today you woke up and you kept going.
Exactly.
And that's huge.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of really valuable things so far. We talked about the power of routine, gentle movement, mindfulness support systems, self-compassion, and this idea of just choosing to keep going as we continue to kind of unpack this source material. Is there anything else that really stood out to you?
The book also talks about this idea of celebrating small wins.
Oh, yeah.
I love that concept.
Because it can be so easy to get caught up in this all or nothing thinking.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
If we didn't achieve complete and total healing today, then it was a failure.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes that it's those small victories that can make a big difference. They help us to chip away at that feeling of hopelessness.
Yeah.
And they remind us that we're actually making progress, even if it doesn't feel like it.
And it's about like building momentum too, right?
Right.
Like one small win can lead to another.
Absolutely. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the routine. You know, like even just making that one small change to your daily routine,
Right.
that can be a huge win.
Yeah, because it shows you that you are capable of taking action,
Yeah.
even when it feels really hard.
It's about proving to yourself that you have the power to make positive changes in your life.
I'm really liking this idea of like shifting our perspective, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on everything that's wrong and all the things we haven't done yet,
Right.
we try to like zoom in on those little glimmers of hope,
Absolutely.
those moments where we did something positive, even if it seems small.
Because those small moments, they add up over time.
They do. They do. So as we wrap up this deep dive into how to overcome depression, is there any final message that you want to leave our listeners with?
You know, I think the most important thing to remember is that you're not alone. Depression can feel incredibly isolating. But the truth is, there are so many people who understand what you're going through.
And there are resources available to help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The source encourages readers to reach out to loved ones,
Yeah.
to seek professional support, and to remember that they are worthy of love and care.
And I think it's important to emphasize that seeking help, whether it's from a therapist or a support group or even just a trusted friend, that is a sign of strength,
Absolutely.
not weakness.
It takes courage to acknowledge that you need support. And reaching out is often the first step towards healing.
So to everyone listening, whether you're personally navigating depression or supporting someone who is, please remember that you are not alone. There is hope.
There is always hope, even in the darkest of times.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful and encouraging. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
You know, and even on those days where it feels like you're just barely treading water, and like you said, just holding steady, that's a victory in itself.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like just not letting yourself get pulled under
Exactly.
by the current.
And that takes so much strength.
Yeah, it really does.
So if that's all you can manage some days, that's enough.
It is. It's about recognizing those small victories
Yeah.
and giving ourselves credit for them.
Exactly.
I think this has been a really powerful and insightful conversation.
Me too.
We've learned so much from how to overcome depression.
It's a really great resource.
It is. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is just this idea that, like, recovery isn't linear. It's okay to have good days and bad days.
And it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, like reaching out for support is not a sign of weakness.
Right.
It's actually a sign of strength.
It shows that you're committed to taking care of yourself.
Exactly. And, you know, there might be people listening who are like, well, this is all great, but like, what if I don't even know where to start?
Yeah, that's a common feeling.
It is. So what would you say to someone who's feeling kind of lost and overwhelmed?
Well, I think the first step is to just be kind to yourself. You know, acknowledge that you're going through something difficult
Yeah.
and that it's okay to not have all the answers.
It's like giving yourself permission to be human.
Exactly. And then from there, you can start to explore some of the things we talked about today.
Right. Like maybe try incorporating a little bit of routine into your day, or go for a short walk,
Or try a guided meditation.
or reach out to a friend or a therapist.
All of those things can make a difference.
They can. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah. Start small and celebrate each step forward.
I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree.
So to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into how to overcome depression. We hope you found it helpful and encouraging. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.